In this episode of The Bear Roars, Dan Caruso sits down with Mike Wussow and Alina Nisenzon, the husband and wife duo behind Poppins Payroll, to unpack a story that embodies ingenuity, resilience, and the power of partnership. What started as a personal frustration while preparing to hire their first nanny turned into a thriving business serving families across the country. From bootstrapping Poppins out of their living room, to navigating the chaos of COVID, to ultimately building a profitable, high-growth company that caught the attention of private equity, is an inspiring journey. This conversation was recorded a year ago, just before a major milestone in their story. We're thrilled to finally share it with our listeners. Let's poke the bear to kick off the conversation.
I am so looking forward to this one because your guys' story is such a cool story, and I think it's going to inspire a lot of people who are trying to do what it is you guys have done or are hoping to try to do in the future. So this is going to be fun for that reason. It's going to be fun because I know you guys so well. You're very close, dear friends of ours, and there's nothing like seeing people close to you kind of do something that has such a special outcome. Good things happen to good people kind of thing. So I can't wait to have you guys share your story and for it to be shared more broadly. So with that as kind of a precursor, tell us like what happened when you discovered kind of a problem that you wanted to have a solution for, which led to the creation of a business. So what sparked the idea?
Well, first of all, Dan, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for being part of this.
It kind of all started when we had our first kiddo, and we were looking for a way to pay our nanny legally, and I looked around at the options, and some of them were too expensive, some of them were too DIY.
And it seems like when you first hear it, it's like, how hard is it to pay someone legally to be a nanny? I mean, the first blush, it's like, why is that a challenge? Why isn't that just easy?
Yeah, and in fact, it's harder for someone who's a household employer than it is for someone who has a small business, which makes no sense because those are the people who are less sophisticated and aren't as able to sort of figure out all the regulations.
Why is it harder, and which ways is it harder? Like when you started to think about doing it, what frustrations or complications did you soon discover?
Well, essentially, even though you're not generating any revenue, you're just paying somebody to take care of your kiddo in your home. You are considered a business. So I've never set up my own business before, so I had to register with the IRS and the state and all these things that there was no roadmap on how to do.
So you as a parent who wants to get kind of care for your first kiddo, as you call them,
yeah,
as well as maybe some household, you have to go through the, and set yourself up as a business in order
Yes.
to legally pay him, okay?
Right. And so I had a demanding job at the time, and so I thought, okay, I'll hire a service to do this. I shouldn't do this myself.
I hear demanding job. I hear from with a really good person running
Excellent.
the company.
Excellent. Yes, that was during my tenure at Zayo, which was an amazing experience. So I was looking for services to do it because I think I saw something at the time online that the IRS said that it would take a normal household 60 hours a year to figure out how to comply with this nanny tax, they call it. And those were 60
They call it
hours.
the nanny tax?
Yes.
So what they were estimating is if you wanted to, as an individual, comply with it, doing it properly, they're estimating get ready to spend 60 hours trying to figure all that out, fill out the paperwork,
Yes.
follow through. So 60 hours, and you're trying to hire someone to relieve you of time,
Exactly.
not add another big task in your schedule.
Right. Yes. And so that drove me to look for a service, and all the services I saw, for lack of a better term, sucked, in my opinion. And so first I just started doing spreadsheets, and then I came to Mike and I said, hey, all these other services suck, and I think I'm just gonna throw on the internet like a payroll service.
And I said, that's the worst bleeping idea I've ever heard.
Yeah.
We're both attorneys at the time. We have two demanding jobs. We're going to have our first baby. You're not a developer. You're not a CPA, and you're going to start a payroll software company.
And just throw it out there and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we kind of thought after Mike was like, okay, do what you will. I thought it would just kind of be self-sustaining and wouldn't require any work. And I didn't really, I of course had no idea the traction that it would get, but we just threw it up on the internet, and I think I was spending like $50 a month on Google, and
On Google Ads. So
on
you
Google
basically
Ads
would float
to
this out there
acquire.
through
Yeah.
Google Ads back when Google Ads were useful.
Right.
And
Yeah.
people would use those to discover that there's a same thing you were going through probably when you were saying there must be an easier way. Others are probably, in the right,
And with the
demographic
nanny,
is probably doing the same thing. I need a solution, and they start to discover your solution.
definitely. And the one thing with the nanny tax world, right, is you're dealing with people's like sensitive information, with taxes, with payroll for their caregiver who they're trusting.
So
their
you
little-
kept Mike behind the scenes. Is that your point?
It's just it's difficult to enter that market without a reputation, because people it's so much based on trust, because of kind of all the sensitive things you're hitting on, like caring for your newborn and money and taxes and all of these things that people are very cautious about.
But so this was a couple years down the road. It took a couple years to get the software written, get the product launched. We had a second kid. And so by the time it launched and she started getting clients, she said she was now general counsel of Z-Colo, and
Which was one of Zale's business units.
and which is more than a 40-hour-a-week job.
Yep.
And she said, well, I don't have time for this. I'm going to have to shut it down. And so now I said, well, now my career was going in the other direction. And I was doing leases nationally for Noodles and Company, and they had just decided they were going to stop expanding. So like 60% of my business had gone away. And I said, well, no, you've proven you're right. We have to add California. And by the way, I've got spare time. So then I started getting involved. We added California in 2018.
By the way, you said you somehow developed the software. How did you guys are lawyers? You're not people who do software. You probably haven't even directed people to do software all that much. How did you figure out what to do if you wanted the software developed?
I mean, it was like anything with a startup. It's a learning process. And I think that's a lot of the fun, is that everything's a new puzzle and a new challenge. And so, yeah, we had to find developers, which was a constant battle. I mean, we found an initial developer, and then, he couldn't really make a go of it with clients like us. So he had to take a full-time job. And then we found a firm in LA that worked for a while, but then they were getting expensive. And so then we moved, and, we got to a place where we kind of had developers around the country and around the world kind of cobbled together, and it worked, and it was cost effective. But yeah, that was definitely a learning experience to become sort of project managers.
One of the cool parts about like the beginning of that journey was I had shared with a friend of mine who was the CEO of some other company. I had kind of mentioned to her that all the nanny tax options out there didn't fit my needs, and I should just start my own nanny tax company. And she was an entrepreneur. She knew a lot of people in kind of the Boulder community, and so she actually she was like, "Wow, that sounds like a great idea," even when I don't think I fully thought it was. And she introduced me to a designer, a front-end developer, a back-end developer, and hooked me up with a bunch of resources that were very encouraging of the idea and were willing to kind of help put the framework together.
Can we name drop? Can we say who it was that helped you, or rather not?
Well, My friend who kind of encouraged the process is Wendy Burkhart.
And helped you really get
Yes, she helped me. I mean,
based on what you're saying.
And she was the CEO of Silvernest, which did home sharing for elders.
Yep.
yeah,
But I think also your Zayo background, because Zayo had such a startup mentality, probably also
Yeah,
made you
for
think
sure.
it was possible.
I mean, I don't have to tell you this, but like, I started Zayo when it was a scrappy startup, and it stayed kind of scrappy even as it became not a startup at all anymore, which I think was great. Like, so many lessons learned through that process. And like, in addition to being scrappy, I think the one thing that was so interesting is, that everybody was hardworking and ambitious, and smart because it was kind of scrappy. But also, the other part of that is the environment, kind of that you created, which was like very transparent, had everybody, allowed everybody to be entrepreneurial, and you always kind of drilled down, that like these are the metrics we're looking at, and everybody was entrepreneurial within the kind of guardrails of like how are we creating value with these decisions, and I think a lot of those, I mean, those are invaluable life lessons, really.
Well, thank you. That makes me feel good hearing that.
Yeah.
When you reflect back, you remember some of the good stuff, but you remember a lot more of the stuff that kept you up in the middle of the night. So when I hear stories from people who were part of kind of my journey and they provide that type of feedback, it makes all the difference in the world for me. So thank you.
Of course.
Okay, so you somehow figure out how to convert what you are learning needs to be done into a set of software, finding kind of a collection of people to do it, without spending too much money. You get some help locally here from maybe people who've been there through the process, kind of know and can connect you with the right people. But one of the things that's both, as I understand it, both what makes this complex, but also is why you were able to build something of interest, is there's so much variation. So it's not, hey, there's a simple process for kind of automating it. We're going to do it in Boulder. Now we're going to cookie cut it everywhere else in Colorado. Then we're going to cookie cut it in every other state. That's not how it works, right? It works very different than that because everywhere's different. Can you explain that?
Well, I think having backgrounds as lawyers was super helpful so we could research it. We didn't have to go and pay a law firm a bunch of money that we didn't have to figure out the states. We could go and figure them out ourselves. And then since we were managing the development, we could create the roadmap, to develop it.
How would you do that, though? I mean, how would you, I know you got the legal background, but let's pick, and this goes way beyond just state, right? I mean, this isn't just, California. You have to get deeper than California. Is that correct? Like, how much deeper do you have to go?
In some states, in California, there aren't any local taxes that you have to worry about, but there are procedures that are not on the book. So it's one thing to read the law and you're like, okay, this is what the taxes should be. These are the forms you have to fill out. This is where you have to file. But California, for example, if your liability is under $10, they write it off. And so we had to build aspects like that into the software that you figure out by calling and having conversations with people. Okay. So there's a fair amount of due diligence that goes into it. And I think the other thing that was really challenging that Alina alluded to is when you're a startup in payroll, I mean, you've got to take people's social security numbers, their bank account numbers. It's really hard to get that level of credibility. So that was a challenge at first, but
how did you overcome that? How did you get your customers to trust you and give you that information?
It was definitely the more reviews we got, the more traffic we got, the more word of mouth that was out there.
What type of reviews would help?
Like Google, Facebook, Better Business Bureau. We would always, we were super diligent about asking our clients. And we always tried to, we had a good product for a reasonable price and the best customer service. So typically our customers loved us. And we're going up against two publicly traded companies in Care.com and Paychex. And so we felt like we had to be so much better than them just to get our foot in the door. And it was starting to happen. We were in 12 states, and then COVID hit. And there was this massive spike in demand because schools closed, daycares closed, and people were having, employing a lot more people in their house, whether it was childcare or teachers or elder care. And so that kind of put us on the map because people just became more aware of us. And I think, in that first year, we tripled our user base.
Yes.
And so then we had sort of the critical mass to sort of have the reputation that people were going to trust us.
So how would you prompt your customers to leave these positive reviews? What's the art of doing that in a way that encourages them, but doesn't irritate them? That sounds like that was a key to getting the credibility with more customers.
Yeah, I think it was mostly just reaching out after a good engagement.
And how would you reach out?
Well, our staff would shoot them an email or ask them while they were on the phone. And we would give our staff like $15 Amazon gift cards if they got a review.
Okay, so a little bit of added incentive for the staff so that they would, want to get nice reviews prompted, and then they get a little something out of it. Okay,
Yes.
good little tidbit there. Whose idea was that?
I think Mike's.
I don't know. Most of the good ideas were yours.
Okay, so COVID hits. Do you remember how many states you were in as COVID hit?
We were in 12.
You were in 12 states, presumably bigger ones, or
Yeah,
what was back
yeah.
then?
Right. Yeah, we did. I think Colorado was first, and then California, Texas, Florida, maybe the DMV
East
area,
Coast, New
Virginia,
York.
Maryland. Yeah.
And roughly how much revenue would you had in early 2020?
Oh, I don't know, $500,000 maybe?
Yes.
And that's annualized?
Yeah.
So you're in 12 states, big states, but you're just getting started.
Yeah.
You got $500,000. But you hadn't been at this that long either. At that point, the business was...
I mean, we were 4 years in, but California launch had just been 2 years earlier. So that's sort of when we started getting serious when we launched California.
Right.
Gotcha. So some revenue there, but a lot of that revenue converted into profitability, fairly early on, right? I mean, you're still paying for expansions and stuff, but
I don't know if we were making money when COVID hit.
No, we weren't. In fact, our
profit.
first, I like to say that our first seed round was the money that Alina got as a result of the Zayo IPO.
oh, so I own part of your company is what you're telling me. Perfect. So importantly, though, you did not take outside capital.
No.
So this is all, and that's why I think this is such an interesting story, because there's so many who are, who have tried, are trying, and will try to do something similar to what you guys did. You're bootstrapping the business. You're getting it started while you're doing other stuff. You've stumbled across kind of a problem in that you encountered in your life. When you look for a solution, you figure out there's maybe an opportunity here. So you played around with that a little bit, and then all of a sudden you're starting to get traction, and then boom, COVID hits. So COVID hits, you're $500,000 of annual revenue. You're not making money at this point. You're probably burning through some cash. Was there any point in that time frame where you looked at each other and said, why are we doing this?
I mean, it was for sure. I think in particular from the Zayo IPO, we would see, Alina's peers, buying new cars or buying a house in the mountains. And I'm like, so we're spending our money to work harder. But we saw, I for sure always saw the vision and saw where this was heading.
Okay, so start taking us through. You're in 12 states, $500,000 revenue. What happened in that next year or so as COVID started to play out?
We were, I think, initially just trying to keep up and make sure it was really important to us to maintain our level of customer service, which was hard to do when you had this massive growth.
And it was kind of one of our differentiating factors between our competitors. So we definitely didn't want to lose that.
Yeah.
And what feedback would you get from those customers that said, here's how you're making this a better experience than maybe what they experience elsewhere? Or were most of them not just new time customer users, but first time users of the service? They were at a point in life where they needed something, so they didn't really have a rival that they could compare you to, but what would they say that would make it sound like, the customer service is better because of what? What was less painful, or what was more rewarding?
I think definitely just one huge aspect is like the human touch. Like you can call and somebody picks up the phone, and that was a differentiator. Some of our competitors, you sit on hold for an hour before you get to speak to somebody. And when you do get to speak to somebody, all of our team, it doesn't matter who you get, they're all going to be very educated, very helpful, empathetic, friendly.
They're all in Colorado.
How did you find these people? How did you find people to do this?
All over the place. I mean, one was managing a wing restaurant. One was a Starbucks manager. We did poach some people from our competitors or from the mortgage industry when the mortgage industry tanked. So we kind of just grabbed people from all over. And
So there's perhaps a new supply of job seekers that were created because of the early days of COVID. People who either didn't want to go into, Starbucks, or didn't, with wings, maybe there wasn't a wings operation to manage unless you were delivering the food. So maybe there were job seekers like, I need something where I could stay
Very true.
at my house and in a safe environment. Is that kind of where they?
yeah, and I think now one of the draws we have is that I would say before COVID, I would have said it was very important for our staff to be in the office 5 days a week, which is difficult when we were located in Boulder and it's so expensive to live here. So a lot of our staff was commuting.
Okay, so you did have them coming
minutes.
into the office.
And then when COVID hit, we had to sort of scramble. We had this, massive increase in users, and we also had to figure out how we were going to work without going into the office. And it turns out these jobs are, it's pretty well suited to do remotely because you're answering the phone, you're doing customer service, there's systems for that. Alina would have a Zoom with the staff every morning, actually twice a day initially, to coordinate. And then you're doing online filing. So we sort of discovered it's important to have some team time together to build those bonds. But people can be super efficient. The right kind of people can be efficient at home. And then that's a big draw for bringing in talent for us.
How hard was it to create the operational kind of capabilities so that, with everyone in different locations, the customer service flow could happen, the calls, go to the right people, you balance the load, you can see what's happening. Was that a tough transition, or did technology make that pretty easy?
A little bit of trial and error, but I think we figured it out pretty quickly through a couple different kind of apps that we use in our organization. But
I think figuring out what was the right technology was the hardest part. Because we're we don't need Salesforce, so we went with HubSpot instead. But we talked to Zendesk, and so just kind of navigating that. And I think a lot of it was reaching out to other entrepreneurs, getting advice.
Yes.
Do you recall any specific stories where you reached out to someone and they helped you navigate? Did you use Zendesk, or was that just an example?
We didn't. That was one we looked at. We ended up going with HubSpot. I think that was.
Did HubSpot play that role as well? The distributing of the call flow and.
No, we have a separate. We use 8x8, so we had a separate system for that. HubSpot is more just for managing customer inquiries and customer contacts.
And one of the reasons we ended up choosing HubSpot is because the emails seem like emails, not like tickets. And we thought that our client base would appreciate a more personal communication with us.
But in general, I think touching a little bit on sort of the unique environment that's in Boulder and in Colorado, it's really kind of, I think, a very unique place to be an entrepreneur because people are so supportive here. Obviously, you and I had a relationship, and you were always available and probably the most.
Yeah, but if you'd asked me how to do that kind of stuff, I'd be like, I have no freaking clue.
But you can reach out to anybody. I was always amazed. I would email someone who I didn't really know, a friend of a friend, and they might even be CEO of a publicly traded company, and they not only respond but be willing, to go and have coffee with me. And I don't think there's anywhere else in the world that happens. And I think, a lot of it is attributed to Phil Weiser and Brad Bernthal and Silicon Flatirons, but also
Techstars, the whole culture.
Techstars, Brad Feld, Jason Mendelson, and then also, all the things you've done with Endeavor and all the other activities.
Yeah, although, I think another huge aspect of the takeaway is probably how you guys lived your life prior to that, and the relationships you built, the social skills you built, so that you were not just comfortable reaching out to the kinds of people you describe, but that their desire to quickly change their priorities to make time to see if they could help you was there. I mean, I think that we shouldn't underestimate that. If you're kind of a person in the situation you guys were in, but you never until you were in that situation networked with others, reached out to others, helped others, and then for the first time you need something and you start trying to do what you did, that's going to be a whole different journey. You're not going to know who to call when you do. You're not going to know the person. They're probably not going to respond as quickly. You're probably going to be a little bit more awkward when you make the request because you haven't just made that part of your daily life. So I think a huge takeaway there is look for opportunities to do stuff for others, look for opportunities to network. We hear that all the time, but more people than not don't really do that much of it, at least not nearly enough. But when you do, then you find yourself in a situation like you guys were in. It was very natural and easy to reach out to folks, and the hit rate for people like, hey, love to help you, what can I do, is very high. It's a hugely important takeaway for hopefully some of the folks listening in on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think as attorneys, we were always, we would help friends or give advice. And so there was some of that people recognized that, we were going to do the same thing and give back. And also, I think just always carrying yourself with honesty and integrity, that goes a long way, and people see that.
Okay, so now you're working your way through 2020. Okay, COVID's hit. How did you balance kind of expansion of geography with kind of getting more momentum within the geographies you're already in? Where did you roughly end up like a year into COVID? You went from a 500,000 run rate to roughly what, a year or so later?
You'll have to take the run rate question. I don't remember. I think one thing that really helped us was actually the dynamic between Mike and I, because we joke that like if I had been the one always running the company, we'd be really happy in Colorado with 500 clients, and all of our taxes would be filed on time, and everything would just be perfect. And if it was just Mike who was at the helm, then we'd be in all 50 states and the trains would be off the tracks. So kind of the balance between like, my kind of more conservative approach and his,
reckless, is that the word you're looking for?
Yes.
Entrepreneurial. We'll use that
his
term.
Vision for the strategy of the company.
Yeah, so I was always pushing growth, and I think in 2022, we went from 15 to 30 states.
Yep.
And Alina was like, "What are you doing to me?"
Yes,
now I got to make sure everything's done right.
Right.
So you're going from 15 to 30 states, like maybe in terms of like run rate, like how quickly did you double, and then how quickly did you double again?
Let's see.
So if you start with the 500,000, when roughly do you think you got to $1 million run rate?
Probably, yeah. So 500,000 in 2020. We were probably 2 million in 21. Yeah. 2 million in 21, 4 million in 22, 8 million in 23. And now we're at about 12 million run rate.
So multiple years of doubling.
Yeah.
And, getting to that magic number of 10 million run rate sometime recently. And tell me about the cash flow nature of that revenue. So was that revenue low margin, high margin? Did anything show up on the cash flow line while you're getting to like 2 million, then 4 million, then 8 million?
Well, it wasn't until we did. I was advocating for price increases, and Alina wanted to give away the service for free.
Oh, yes.
And so we did our first price increase. You remember when that was?
I think 21.
Yeah, 21. And so we just raised it by $5. We went from, or $6, I guess, from 39 to 45. And we
Yes.
hadn't really been making money before that, but we were sort of hitting critical mass. And as you know, in software, adding more customers doesn't really add that much more cost. So we were starting to hit that critical mass, and then we increased. And so after that, we were running margins of at least 50%.
And by margins, margins can mean different things to different people. What kind of margins?
Like EBITDA.
EBITDA.
Yeah.
And a lot of that EBITDA would convert to cash because you didn't have a lot
Right.
of capital.
Right. We didn't have any depreciation or interest. So, yeah, we didn't have any debt.
No debt,
Yeah.
no outside investors. You guys literally bootstrapped this from an idea that came out of a little bit of like frustration. How am I going to do this? This is harder. I bet a lot of other people can benefit. So you got no debt. You raised no outside equity. COVID hits and you double, then you double again, then you double another time, and now you're eclipsing $10 million of revenue, still growing at a really nice clip. You pick your head up and say, okay, now what? Now what do we do? What started to happen at that point in time?
Well, I mean, I think we had had inbound and talked to potential investors, but nothing had really come of it. And
the inbound was people who wanted to invest.
Yeah, like a lot of private equity mostly, and we had some strategics inquiring, and so I don't know. I think we had planned to just keep running it until we got bigger, but then.
Because you were sort of enjoying what you were doing too. You built a nice team. You had close relationships with a lot of your employees. It was frustrating, I'm sure, tedious at times running it, but you could see the benefits of what you were doing. Revenue's growing, you're generating cash flow, so you could have kept doing that at that point.
I mean, it was fun. We were feeling accomplished. We also, luckily, because of the EBITDA margins, weren't in a position where we had to go look for investors or speak with strategics about. We had lots of runway. So where at the time, a lot of companies found themselves in the completely opposite place. So we weren't looking for anything, but.
Okay, so we're going to come back to this part of the story. Okay, so now business is going well, revenue, EBITDA, cash flow, no investors. Where did you come from, Alina? How did you even get to a point where you're working at Zayo? What was your background? And then Mike, I'm going to have you take us through your background as well. So where did you guys come from? How'd you end up in Boulder?
Well, I was born in Odessa, Ukraine, and my family immigrated to San Francisco when I was 7.
So you're born in what part of Ukraine is that?
Odessa, so that's on the Black Sea.
It's on the Black Sea. Where's that relative to where the war has been?
It's kind of like a little bit west, like west coast, southern west coast of Ukraine. I mean, close to Crimea, but far from the eastern kind of section.
Gotcha. So you were born in that part of the Ukraine.
And at the time, that was the USSR. So when we immigrated, we kind of left the USSR as refugees in '89, immigrated to San Francisco.
What triggered your family leaving there as refugees? What were the circumstances that your parents faced?
My family's Jewish, and Russia was still very much anti-Semitic. And so my grandfather somehow miraculously got to be a doctor, even though that really wasn't permitted. But he was always harassed, and he would always have to make house calls to government parties, officials, and there was a lot of little things, like what kind of housing you could live in, and just a lot of experiences my family had. I was very small, so I was kind of oblivious to a lot of the things they had gone through when we immigrated. But the U.S., the Jewish Federation, had petitioned the U.S. government to increase the quota of Russian Jews, or Soviet Jews, but they called them Russian Jews at the time. But and so the Federation, the U.S. Federation, actually was the organization that helped us all kind of migrate over to the U.S. and fill some quotas for a lot of Soviets were, highly educated engineers, developers, and so that's how the quota was kind of formed to help fill that void in the workforce. So we immigrated to San Francisco.
And was the factor that your father was a doctor, was that part of the reason he was able to emigrate?
No, I don't think so. It was kind of I think the way the program worked is somebody else had to have immigrated before you and would vouch for you, and they would be your sponsor, and then and then you would be able to. You went through a bunch of interviews, and it was kind of cool actually. So. Not cool, but I thought it was cool at the time when I was 7. But so there was a very unique path that everybody took through that program where you went from Moscow and then you went to Vienna, and they had kind of like set up, like they had set up everything, right? So you had housing when you arrived. You had Viennese sponsors that would let you live in their home, didn't speak your language, but that's okay. They had schooling set up for you. So you'd go to Vienna, then there was 2 cities outside of Rome, Ladispoli and, I forget the other one. But there were 2 cities that had set up as camps. And when you were there, a lot of the U.S. cities would pitch you on, you should come to New York, or you should come to San Francisco, or you should come to Cleveland.
Kind of like the way it works today with U.S. immigration.
Yeah, very welcoming. They all offered different things. Like, for example, they would say, we will have a car for you, and we will subsidize your housing for up to 3 months, or whatever their pitch was to incent these people to come to their city. So, yeah, very different than how
You're
it works
7 years
today.
old. Does any of this, do you remember any of that, or just you
I
remember
do.
the stories that were told?
I wasn't part of kind of the refugee interviews and the like pitching from the cities, but I remember the journey, and I remember it as a very happy one, because you're in like a village with a bunch of people you might have known. Actually, we did, from Odessa, that are also immigrating and kind of embarking on this new chapter in their life. And because it was the USSR too, none of my grandparents, my parents, we all immigrated together, but they had never been allowed to leave the border. So they'd never been anywhere.
Wow.
So this was an amazing adventure for them. I'm sure very scary, because they left with, whatever they could pack in their suitcase. But also, they were seeing a world they had only seen in picture books.
And then when they shared those memories with you when you were a little bit older, what did they focus on? Like when they saw the rest of the world, what were they discovering? What was most vivid to them?
I think the freedom they were
The
experiencing.
freedom, the way of life.
Yes, I mean, my parents, both of them have PhDs, and they were working at a pizzeria when we were in Italy just to make some extra money, and could not be happier. Just kind of the liberty to go where you want, do what you want, speak to whom you want, like that was newfound for them.
Wow. Interesting. So how did you get from Italy to San Francisco?
So San Francisco, we picked San Francisco from kind of the lineup we were given. They found us a sponsor, and I think that whole process from Italy to San Francisco was about 3 months. And so we moved into the house that was subsidized, which was pretty hilarious. It was a block of San Francisco where both of the sides of the block were sloping to the middle, and our house was directly on the middle.
Yeah.
So half the house leaned to the left and half the house leaned to the right.
Wow, sounds like your husband.
Yeah. And so we began our family adventure in San Francisco.
Okay, so you're beginning to grow up down in San Francisco. You're starting to go from 7 to 8 to 9 to 10. So, Mike, at that point, you'd been, what, about 35 years old? So, where were you while she was a 10-year-old in San Francisco?
No comment. I'm 49 again. So I grew up in Wisconsin, which is very similar to Russia.
It is actually.
Cold and people drink a lot. And went to law school in Madison. My father actually got his PhD in Boulder in 1962, and my sister was born here. And so Boulder had always been somewhere on my radar. I actually wanted to go to CU, and my parents said, no, you'll flunk out, because they thought I'd be just skiing all the time and not studying at all. So I went to Madison and then practiced in Chicago at Sidley and Austin.
Yes, Sidley and Austin. Yep.
Ended up in a place in my life where I wasn't in a relationship anymore, and I could sort of move wherever I wanted to, and so ended up moving out to Boulder.
If I remember right, the moving to Boulder wasn't, you had the background here, but you weren't really.
Okay, there's a little more to the story. Okay, so I quit my job.
But I wasn't trying to get to more of the story, but please share.
So I quit my job. I'd moved from Sidley. I was at Foley and Lardner in Madison. Moved back to Madison, and I quit my job. And it was a great job, and I told everyone I was moving to Portland.
Yep.
And I'd never been to Portland. And I flew to Portland, and I signed a lease. And I realized that I did not want to move to Portland. And so I got out of my lease, and I was flying back to Madison. I was flying through Denver, and I had no idea what I was going to do because I'd already quit my job and told everyone I was moving to Portland. There was a blizzard in Madison, and so my flight from Denver to Madison got canceled. And a light bulb went off, and I said, can you put me on a flight tomorrow night? And I drove to Boulder. I went to the Walnut Brewery.
Really? Walnut Brewery.
I sat at the bar. I'd been in Portland.
And roughly what year are we in now?
This was 2000.
So 2000.
Fall of 2000.
Wow.
And when I went out in Portland, people were very just kind of closed, and you couldn't really start a conversation. And coming from the Midwest and not knowing anyone there, I'm like, this really isn't going to probably be a great environment. So I made friends with everyone at the bar at the Walnut Brewery. I thought, okay, yeah, this is my place. I signed a lease the next morning, and I moved here 2 weeks later.
Wow.
And I like to say second best decision I ever made. First being sitting to my
I thought you were going to say
here.
Poppins Payroll.
No.
So had you been to Boulder? I know your dad was in Boulder.
Yep.
This wasn't your first time ever dropping into Boulder, but you intending on going back to Wisconsin, don't like Portland, get delayed at the airport because of a snowstorm, come into Boulder, go to Walnut Brewery, and decide you're going to, at least stay here for a period of time.
Yeah, it was very fortuitous. Yeah.
Yep. And at that point, so now it's year 2000. You're not 10 years old anymore at that point, right?
No.
So tell us.
I just graduated high school.
You just graduated high school. You just graduated high school, and then what?
So I went to Cal Poly for college, and then I was always taught that you're either going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher. So I chose lawyer. And then I went to law school at USF, and during my first year of law school, I went on a girls' trip to Boulder, and I met this handsome devil, and I could not resist the dimples.
The dimples, those are dimples. Wow.
And so I finished out law school in San Francisco, and we kind of, he had opened up his own firm. We did long distance for 2.5 years.
But she would come in the summers, and she worked at, she was an intern in the legal department at Crocs.
Oh, that's
first
right.
summer.
Crocs.
That's right.
So tell everyone what Crocs is. I think most people probably know, but they certainly don't know. Most of them probably don't know the history of Crocs as it pertains to here in Colorado. So tell us about Crocs. You were there early, right?
Well, yeah. So Crocs, I'm sure everybody knows the shoes, but they in at that time, summer of 2006, they had just gone public. So it was a really exciting time to be there because they were still very much, even though they had gone public, they still had that like kind of startup culture too.
A little bit more so than Zayla ran.
Yeah.
They had-
Yes.
Well, yeah,
Had a
they
wild
had
startup
grown
culture.
so fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when I first heard about them, there's this George Bodecker was going around to yacht shows with
Yeah.
a couple of people trying to sell these crazy looking shoes. And everybody kind of thought, well, nothing's going to happen with that.
Right.
And it just took off. In fact, you guys
did.
could see the
Yes.
Kodago bottles over the
Oh,
shoulder.
yeah.
That actually can trace its roots to Crocs because Ron Snyder, who came in as the CEO of Crocs, took it public and got it through its exit. He, as he was later living the good life, he, with a couple other buddies, started Kodago, which I was fortunate enough to be an early investor, and that's done really well. So a lot of these things get tied together. So
Yes.
you're here as an intern with Crocs. It's a crazy environment, but at that point already going public. They went public early in their history, if I remember right. They're probably
Yeah.
only like a couple, 3 years old at that point, I imagine.
Yeah, I think that's right. And
And I think their value was about what Nike's value was at the time or
Yes.
something.
Yeah,
They had
it
just-
wasn't crazy.
that was super fun. It was a fun environment to be, especially as a first year law student.
Pretty social environment too, if I
Yeah.
remember.
And it was, everything was new. So like, one day I would come in and be like, what am I doing today? And my boss, actually Eric Revich,
Oh, Eric Rebich, yes. So many connections.
yeah, and Sarah Haverstock, but they're like, you should go around to these places because they're selling counterfeits, and you need to take some pictures and send some cease and desist. So it was always wild. Or like, you need to go tell this salesman that now that we're public, he can't come back with a handshake deal. He needs to have a contract. So just like a really fun, like growing pains of having grown so quickly and being public now. It was really fun. But anyways. So I was at Crocs and finished out law school and moved to Boulder full time in 2008. And I went to go work at a law firm, Q-Tech Rock.
Yeah, before you kind of moved there, when people who are early in their careers who have aspirations to be entrepreneurs, a lot of times what I kind of encourage them to do is don't think about going with the startup. Go with a company that's scaling. Go with a company that's already got that slope going. And if that's your first experience, you start to see and feel what success is looking like and all that involves. And you build relationships that in a normal work environment, you kind of build them slow and they're not as close and tight. But when you're going through the kind of experiences you just shared with us, when you're going to do that with people around you, you take that and remember that for the rest of your life. You build much closer bonds. And I think that probably helped you, those years, early years at Crocs, probably helped you when you were doing Poppins as well, is my guess.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit of what not to do and some of what to do.
Yeah, I mean, certainly like seeing them going through scaling was definitely stuck with me. But and I went to go work at this law firm in Denver in their commercial real estate and lending transactions. And I had always loved real estate. But that was the wrong time to join that practice group because then the crash happened. And in 2009, they got rid of the first 3 classes. And I was among them.
especially in real estate.
Yes. So that was kind of devastating at the time because there were no other real estate jobs to go find.
But that's when I think it was Brad Bernthal
Yes.
said, well, there's this startup called Zayo
Wow,
and
Brad.
they're
Okay.
looking for an intern in their legal department.
Well, not an intern.
Wasn't? Oh, I thought it was initially an intern.
I did get paid weekly.
Okay.
Contractor.
Okay,
Um,
contractor.
But yeah, and he was kind of like, well, telecom, there's a lot of like realty interests involved, so that might work well for you. And he was right. That was also an extremely fun, fast-paced environment.
Yeah, those early, not just the early handful years, but the first decade of Zayo was just, I mean, every year was in its own way, its own crazy year of one type or another, and usually good in those, we had some kind of rougher periods later on, but in those years, it was like every year we were building upon the prior year and learning new things, doing new things, big ambitions, and the team at the company really rallied around each other and built lifelong relationships, friendships, and collaboration. It was awesome.
Definitely. And I should just add, too, that backing up a little bit, I think the move to Boulder was probably Mike and I's like biggest fight, I would say. I don't know if you agree, but
Yeah.
because, and Mike was vehement that I have to move to Boulder, and that was kind of a deal breaker after like 2.5 years together. But, he kind of like painted this picture and was like, I could move to San Francisco and we could both work at huge law firms and not really know each other or our kids, and hopefully we'll reconnect in 20 years. Or you can move to Boulder and live a very different life. And I think you're right.
How hard was that
Whoa.
for you
Did
to
you get
say
that on
you
tape?
think he was right? It seemed like that was really hard for you to get those words out.
I know. Well,
I think you got to speak up. I don't think the mic got it.
yeah, I mean, it is hard. I mean, all my family and everybody's in San Francisco, and San Francisco is not too shabby either. I love that city, but Boulder is unique.
Okay, so we're going to go back in time a little bit again. So we went from 2009, 2010. Alina's joining Zayo. Now we're going back to 2000, 2001 is when you moved out here to Boulder. So how did you get from 2000 to 2010?
Well, I had impeccable timing. I moved out here just as the dot-com bubble burst.
Okay.
So I had been getting calls from headhunters. I could go anywhere I wanted, and suddenly there were no jobs.
Yep.
So I ended up doing a clerkship with the Boulder District Court, sort of get my foot in the door, because Boulder was a hard place to get a job as an attorney too, because everybody wanted to live here, and there just weren't very many jobs. So I clerked for Judge Balin and for Judge Hale, which was a fantastic experience. Didn't make any money, but I learned a lot and made a lot of connections in Boulder, and then went to work for Bubba Berg, George Berg
Okay,
at Berg Hill, which was a totally amazing experience. And he still is one of my mentors, and someone who I care very much about. But I had that sort of entrepreneurial spirit at that time, and it was hard for me to kind of take orders and be part of this bigger organization. So started my own law firm. But then, I think once this started taking off, I think I was sort of miscast as a lawyer. I had some success as a lawyer, and I could force myself to do it, but I don't think it was my natural skill set. I think, building things and working with people and, kind of being a little more by the seat of my pants was more of a natural fit for me. So once we started Poppins, then I really felt like I was doing something that I was kind of more well-suited and meant to do.
Okay, so we're now up to Poppins, which we've already spent a lot of time on, but we left it as a little bit of a cliffhanger. We're now in late 2023, early 2024. Your run rate is above 10 million-ish at this point, 12 million. Your EBITDA is looking good. Your no debt, none of those pesky, venture investors, and you're starting to be noticed. So take us through what happened over the next, several months, because we're still in 2024 now. What happened over the last 6-9 months?
Yeah, well, I think we just sort of thought, well, let's see what's out there. Let's sort of see what people are offering. We were looking at it. We have so many, we still do, we have so many opportunities of other products that we can provide and other expansion, whether it's going to Canada or providing banking services to employees, other things that sort of require a little more level of professionalization and sophistication in order to be able to provide. So we thought, well, let's see what's on the table and let's see if there are any partners out there that would be exciting. And obviously we would de-risk a little bit, but then also somebody who could really, turn Poppins into a household name, while keeping our culture, while keeping
Didn't Mary already do that?
Yeah.
Oh,
she
yeah.
did. She sure did. And I mean, we were always open to having discussions, and these most recent discussions kind of came at a time where we were really starting to think about scaling the business.
So we narrowed it down. We decided that private equity was the right route for us to go, in part because we wanted to stay involved, and we saw that there's so much opportunity in front of us that we didn't want to just be done with it. We wanted to continue to be involved and continue to be part of that continued success. And so we narrowed it down to a few private equity groups that we were very interested in. And we told them, we're not going to go exclusive. We want you guys to do all of your market diligence and then give us your best offer, and then we'll decide on one. Mm-hmm. And so we went through that whole process. And I think there was one in particular that we were sort of hoping would be the best offer.
And generally speaking, as you started to get feedback from this broader collection of potentially interested parties, did they show interest? Did they, express interest in wanting to work with you guys? The valuations that they were ascribing to it, were you disappointed? Were you pleasantly surprised?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think the valuations aren't what they were in 2021. But they've come back, and we were certainly very pleased. I think a lot of people saw the potential and the growth.
More, I think, than last time around, because we've kind of entertained discussions before. And I think in previous discussions, we kind of had the feeling that a lot of the private equity firms just kind of didn't get our business because we're not B2B, and they don't quite know what to make of our kind of niche market. But this time around, I felt like a much warmer reception.
Yeah. Well, and there were a lot more that we were talking to too. But so we ended up, deciding to go with Spectrum Equity, which we just felt like.
And who is Spectrum Equity?
So they're a San Francisco private equity firm. They have done. So they specialize in companies around 10 million, and then they, 10x them. Mm-hmm. Ancestry, Monkey Survey, Grubhub,
All Trails.
I mean, they've
big success stories.
Yeah, big success stories, and also success stories in a market like ours, where they're selling to similar people. And focusing on customer service and great products, and not coming in to cost cut, but coming in, to
10x.
Yeah, exactly.
So they've seen enough product market fit, commercial momentum, differentiation. They say, well, whatever the company they're looking at has gotten themselves to over 10 million in revenue and proven there's an opportunity there. We now as Spectrum Equity have the opportunity to come in and help scale it to something far more significant. Kind of their business model? Yes.
And I think also, private equity often gets a bad rap, and it's often deserved. But I think Spectrum has a reputation, as being a high integrity firm. And so far, that's definitely been our experience with them.
Yep. Good deal. And so what happened?
So a little over a week ago, they
a week ago as we are recording this, but
we're
not going to release this for a little while until you give us the green light. So we'll say, let's see when. So we're early October now. So this was
Yeah, it was
Very end of September, right?
actually the last day of September. Yeah, they came in and took a majority interest, and we're still remaining involved and very heavily involved at this point. But there's a new CEO, Nafisa Rimtila, and she is a superstar. Stanford MBA, Dartmouth undergrad, most recently ran banking for Robinhood. And also just like she gets it. She cares about her staff. She gets that what's made us successful is our culture and our customer service and our product and how we treat our customers. So I think, she's just going to crush it.
And she describes it as like she's like in a learning phase, which we take as super positive. The converse would be if a private equity firm came in thinking they understand everything about the business and start making changes immediately. And
I've never had that experience.
right. And so that's not what we've experienced so far. And so that just kind of reinforces our initial kind of feeling about Spectrum and the kind of firm they are.
But they do have the expertise
Yeah.
to know how to execute in the banking relationships. And just, I think we could have done it all on our own, but it would have taken a lot longer to pursue all these opportunities. And the opportunities sort of were getting harder. So for us to do it on our own, this was just kind of a shortcut to make sure that we realized all these opportunities before they disappear.
Great. And I'm going to characterize in general terms, and if I say too much, we could always edit. I don't think I will. But the exit that you got was multiple X of revenue, several whole number multiples of revenue without being specific. And you said they took a majority interest, but what that implies is that in exchange for that majority interest is they paid you a lot of cash. You ended up with a really nice exit in the process. You also elected to remain an investor in the company to roll over part of the value that you created because you believe in that they're probably going to take this thing and hopefully 10x it, and you get a lot of additional upside for what you left behind at the company. And as you mentioned, like a lot of private equity firms do who are trying to take stuff to a different place, they are building a management team, and you guys are helping them kind of in a transition type capacity and helping them really understand the business and support them as they look to take this to a whole nother level. Is that all a fair characterization?
Yeah, it is. And I would just say that the only counter we made to their offer was we want to keep more equity because we believe in what you're going to do with the company or what we're going to do together with the company.
Yep. Well, that's great. And I said very early on that I'm so excited about the story because the path that you guys were able to take is a path that so many aspirational entrepreneurs, that's what they're playing for. I'm going to start a business. We're going to find a real problem. We're going to have a real solution. We're going to make it work. We're going to attend to our customers. We're going to build a great team. We're going to go from the aspiration of starting something to a business that gets to north of 10 million in revenue, has really strong financials, and at some point we're going to find an exit, and then we're going to go and do what's next for us in life. And you guys, in a short period of time, have done that. Wow. I mean, how's it feel? Have you let yourselves really start to enjoy that yet?
I don't know. I mean, we got a bottle of Scarpetta, $13 bottle of Scarpetta, and ordered takeout sushi, and it went to bed at 9 and probably slept through the night for the first time in like 3 months. So that was our main celebration.
Well, that was day one, but as it sunk in each day since.
I think with every passing day, it's sinking in more. And we're kind of allowing ourselves to kind of step back and be like, wow, we did that. Like kind of, I'm proud of what we've managed to accomplish.
I was surprised when Mike took all those proceeds and put them in crypto, but I'm sure that'll work out too.
Well, like I said, he's not risk averse, so.
Wow. You're gonna have to keep him to.
I don't. It's not a joint account. Alina has all the money.
So, in this discussion, there certainly were a lot of things that a listener could take away as to how your journey kind of came together. And certainly luck plays a role, it always does, but a lot of other things play a role too. Luck alone is gonna cause something to happen that you guys did. So what would you like to share with those who are listening in and say, man, I'd really like, to follow a journey that sounds like that journey? What did you learn along the way? What words of wisdom would you share?
Find a super smart woman, marry her, and listen to everything she says.
The only
Okay,
part of that
I
is
guess
true
that's
for
all
you.
it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. No, I think obviously you have to have a good idea, but you have to work really hard. Like you're on 24 hours a day. You're never going to be able to really take a vacation as a founder. Focusing on the customer, like passionately focusing on the customer and making sure you're providing the best customer service, at least in our space, but I suspect that applies to all spaces. And I would say being cheap too, like not, being thrifty, like doing things well, but not overpaying so that you have the money to keep expanding. I mean, I would think those are definitely a few of the values that got us to the scale we achieved.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think you're giving yourself credit, but to kind of not be risk averse to some degree. I mean, a lot of the things we figured out on the fly, like how we started this, we don't know anything about taxes or development or anything like that, but just to like reach out for help, and there's lots of resources, and see if you can't put something together.
Bang your head against the wall until
Yeah.
you break through it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there was lots of trying times. It was not all roses and rainbows. So lots of like learning moments.
Yeah, I mean, resilience is what I'm hearing you guys talk about, and not being afraid, to take on a lot. Now you could take on too much, of course, but if you take on too little, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, you have to be an optimist. I think you have to be. That's why it's great to have a good co-founder. And obviously, it was way more meaningful for us to build it together because we're sort of building it for our family too. Our goals are obviously completely aligned. But I think you have to be an optimist and a pessimist. And so I was the optimist who always thought it was going to grow and we were going to achieve it. And she was the pessimist who was worrying, like, what if payroll doesn't run? What if the taxes get filed wrong? So she was making sure that like all of that behind the scenes actually happened. And so I think it was that balance that really got us there.
Yeah, in some respects, the fact that your area of focus was something that's an everyday thing. It's not some, hey, I'm going to take Gen AI and I'm going to create new energy sources that will allow us to fly to Saturn someday. It was like, hey, this is a day-to-day thing that people are going to face, and we can help make it better. So have you started to think about the future for you guys? What is there any early thoughts on, is there a next, what a next might look like?
I think there will be a next, because we're not idle, much like yourself. Can't just be idle. But I don't know.
We're going to try. Well, I mean, we're going to be busy with this for a while.
Yes.
Yeah, for certain.
And then definitely want to take a little time and not jump right in. But I mean, I feel like it would probably be software. I mean, there's just so much opportunity, and we've figured out a lot of the hard parts. So, it would be easier to do it a second time.
Yeah. Okay. They look at each other and you don't know what's quite going on in their heads there.
I'm wondering what he's got on his mind. Yeah, what he's thinking back there.
Yeah, the good news is you don't have to rush. You are going to be part of the company that you created, and brought in new investors and helped get them on a really good track. And there's no rush to do that next thing. But I'm sure you feel like, man, there's so much we now have within us and have in terms of we created something and we made something work and we built a team, we built success. You don't want that. You want to experience that again in one way or another. Yeah. So, that becomes both the fun part and the hard part, because, it's hard to stumble across an idea that is, hasn't already been done, and that you could do something and then make it successful. Even if you've had success before, having success again is still hard. It just is. But you're much more equipped, the second and third time around. So this has been great, and this has been one of my most enjoyable things that I've seen in the past, year, 2 years, just because of knowing you guys and being close to you guys. Just seeing this play out has been fantastic, and I'm glad we've been able to share your story via the podcast.
Yeah, this was amazing, and we've obviously so much appreciated your and Cindy's support through all of this. I don't think anyone's been more behind us than you guys, and so thank you.
A lot of people have been behind you guys, but I appreciate you saying that. So good. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Bear Roars. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe on your listening platform. This podcast was produced by Loud Bear Productions and edited by Kendall Weinberg with support from Gibson Siegert.